Eclipses were a big deal, right? We just had this eclipse season locally here in 2025 in September, 2 eclipses, a lunar eclipse in Pisces and a solar eclipse in Virgo. This video is going to be a little bit of a different video about eclipse technique and how we time the effects of eclipses. And a little bit of a heavy video for me to make because this eclipse technique, and it's a little bit of a strange video because this is sort of an obscure or arcane eclipse technique that's not as commonly brought into the discourse, but it's extremely powerful. And in fact, in history, it's just accurately predicted things when you use what we call the Ptolemaic timing of how to time when eclipses have their most powerful impact. And that's what we're going to break down in this video, particularly as it relates to the nation state of USA or America, because America has had 3 visible eclipses crisscrossing America since 2017. And using this Ptolemaic timing technique generates some really interesting results in terms of what was eclipsed, what changed, what did it time, and how has it changed. That's this video, America Eclipsed. What's going to happen? The reason why I'm releasing it now is that we're about to enter the most interesting and potent period of triggering for these eclipse effects from the eclipses that we had a few years ago. And so I want to lay it out here so we can all just see it and see what may happen, largely to help us process if there is some events that are strange or different or that feel destabilizing, you know, in the American landscape or amongst the body politic of America or the leadership of America. This video may help us prepare for that and be like, okay, yep, this was it. This was the timing. This is what that Ptolemaic technique predicted, and here we go. We're living along the astrological path, you might say, a well-predicted or sort of a well-aligned energetic with the astrology, the techniques of astrology. So, and that's kind of why we do it, right? I mean, one idea here is that if there is something that this technique is going to predict, and I think it may have already done its job, partially at least with the Charlie Kirk assassination, which is a big deal. But if this does prove again to be a valid technique or an interesting, highly applicable technique, it is a proof for astrology, one, and that alone can be awe-inducing, can kind of create reverence for the craft of astrology, reverence for the beauty of the technique set that we've inherited from the history of astrology and astrologers that have come before us. You know, so some of why I want to do this is about that more than it is about saying, hey, I predict there's going to be some major event. Okay, I'm not even predicting anything. I just want to lay bare the proof, lay bare the technique, and then enjoy the show with you and with everybody else. Enjoy this show called reality and see what may unfold here. And I say that a little bit in jest. These are heavy topics. These are heavy conversations when you start talking about the heart of the body politic being exposed, or, you know, some sort of heavy hitting moment for the collective, sort of laughing to cope, you might say, at one level. Okay, so let's just kick it off here. I want to start by saying I get this technique from a particular teacher of mine, Ben Dykes, Dr. Ben Dykes. A lot of you may know Dr. Dykes. He's got a press called Kazemi Press where he translates a bunch of texts from the ancient world. His translation of Dorotheus of Sidon is one of my favorites. It's a mainstay in my library. I learned a lot from Dorotheus in terms of how I practice on a number of levels. So that book is amazing. You can get it, I think, probably just type in Ben Dykes Kazemi Press. But this video is about a technique he taught. And he's written a couple of books called The Astrology of the World, or About the Astrology of the World, or Mundane Astrology, particularly in that Islamic tradition where they were so key in developing techniques around mundane astrology. These techniques about the Ptolemaic eclipse timing techniques come from that book, I believe, of Dr. Dykes. But I got this from a lecture that he gave at UAC, the United Astrology Conference in 2018 in Chicago. I went to this lecture and I watched him deliver it, but you can get the PDFs from that lecture still, and I'm going to link that into the description here. So just go down to the description and click the link. It's a PDF. It's still available on the UAC website where Dr. Dykes lays out the techniques. It's a kind of shorthand of slides from that lecture, so it's not like explicit, but I think when you get the PDF of those slides, you'll be able to glean, hopefully, what's happening in terms of the nuts and bolts of the timing. All I'm going to say in this video is that I've applied that, and I've done it in my own way, making it a little bit more precise, okay? I'm not gonna lay out in this video, here's all the timing. I'm not teaching the technique. I'm sharing the application of the technique that I made to help us process what we're about to enter into in terms of eclipse effects in America and in the American landscape. To summarize the technique, very high level, it's like an algorithm. You have a moment of an eclipse, you go to where the eclipse is visible, and then you plug it into an algorithm and it spits out a range of dates that tell you when the peak effects will arrive. In the ancient world, and according to Ptolemy, solar eclipses you measure in years, lunar eclipses you measure in months in terms of their effects. So most often with visible solar eclipses, it's like 2 years later when the effects arrive. So it can be shorter or longer. It just depends on how long the eclipse is visible and a few other factors. But just go to that slide set that I'm going to link you to if you want to learn this, okay? The only other thing I'm going to say is that there's 3 eclipses we're going to look at. The Great American Eclipse 2017, August. We're going to look at the October 2023 solar eclipse in Libra, and then we'll finally examine the 2024 April solar eclipse in Aries. All 3 of these eclipses visible right through America. And that's a predicate trigger for this technique. Is it visible there? Now run the Ptolemaic algorithm, and now you get the timing of when the effects will arrive. You go to the Great American Eclipse in 2017, 21st August 2017. I was watching it. I remember I got a little sheet out and I saw with the paper you can get the kind of half vision where you don't have to look at the sun. It's famous because Donald Trump looked up at the sun, and you may remember it was a really big deal. But using this method, the range of a peak period for these effects to arrive is 18 March 2019 to 14 October 2019. So those are the dates we're interested in, the big events that happened, to try to say, okay, that was what that eclipse produced. And mind you, I'm going to say this here, Dr. Dykes in that PDF runs through eclipses that triggered World War I. He looks at an eclipse, I think it's 1912, that triggers the assassination of Franz Ferdinand in 1914. I believe that's correct in terms of the dates. Either way, it's that event of the assassination of Franz Ferdinand that this technique would predict when you run the algorithm. There's a very famous case, and I'll say this here. Robert Zoller, who was one of the 3 Roberts that was a part of the translation project that was Project Hindsight, where they were translating Greek and Arabic and Latin texts into English. Robert Zoller famously used some variant of this technique. It's unclear exactly how he calculated it because he didn't show his work. He had these newsletters he would send out in the late 1990s and early 2000s, but he famously predicted 9/11 using this technique. And then he was visited by authorities because of it, actually. That's how hot this technique can be, is that when you start talking about it and then the effects happen, you know, people get interested. Hey, how did you do that, or what was it? But so no, this technique was part of that. There was a solar eclipse in 1999 that was across the Atlantic, and there was a little part of it visible right on the east coast of America. And so he ran the technique and was saying, hey, there could be terrorist attacks. I think was his exact word in the newsletter. I have the copies of the newsletter. They're available online. You can find them. But it's something like there could be a terrorist attack in like early September. I mean, he was quite accurate with his prediction. And so that's a little bit of the background, I mean, of some other areas in history and other applications of this technique that have predicted things quite accurately. So here we go, Great American Eclipse. So what happened in 18 March 2019 to 14 October 2019? And I'm going to say this here too. When you think about solar eclipses, one of the classic delineations is the king is blocked. The king falls. The sun is the king symbolically, and when it's eclipsed, it means there's a blocking of the king. And so often with these eclipses, you might think about things collapsing or things really changing in a way where there's destabilization, that the leadership or hierarchies break down or crumble as a result of the eclipse effects. Like an assassination, right? Franz Ferdinand assassinated, you know, the next in line, or the powerful political figure gone. So let's come to 2019 and 18 March to 14 October. What happened during that period that we can assume was a part of these eclipse effects? Well, the Mueller report release, spring 2019. So there you go. This idea of Donald Trump and the accusations against him that later that same summer during the peak triggered Nancy Pelosi to launch an impeachment inquiry in September 2019. And of course, we know there was an impeachment from this. So this impeachment of Trump definitely, I think, was one of those eclipse effects. And remember, when he looked up at it, that's kind of so interesting, right? Because he looks up, he sees the eclipsed sun, and then he's impeached during this window of the peak period of these eclipse effects. And this is the big thing, and this is going to come up repeatedly in this video. When I saw this originally, because I've done this timing a long time ago, before the 2 eclipses we've just had. All of this work is actually older work that I'm just releasing now explicitly here on my YouTube channel because we're here with the timing of it in 2025. We're right here in the big pocket. But it's the Jeffrey Epstein moment where he was arrested and then either died or didn't die, and either committed suicide or didn't commit suicide. We don't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein. There's many theories, all right? But effectively, it was that Jeffrey Epstein moment in July and August 2019, which you can think of as the eclipse of the power structure, you know, a significant figure being blocked or eclipsed or removed. You know, but the thing about that Jeffrey Epstein moment that summer was that before that, this was a marginalized discourse. I mean, people have been talking about Epstein for even the decade before that, because he had a famous court case in Florida in the late aughts that was well known in, let's say, marginalized circles in terms of alternative media. But it was really this moment when the arrest happened and then the questions about what happened to him were front and center, where this became a front and center story, I think, in a larger collective. And it certainly became majorly politicized in the 2024 election. This was a huge part of the discourse. Like, why won't the Democrats release the list? And the Republicans and the Trump campaign ran on, hey, we're going to release the list. And that was how they got a political advantage against the Democrats. And of course, we know what has happened this year makes that quite ironic, given that this Epstein question has now boomeranged back onto the Republicans and onto Donald Trump in particular, as there's questions about his involvement and how close he was with Epstein, and those become more and more pointed, those questions, as more and more information gets released. And so what's so interesting is this is a continued theme. It wasn't just that there was a big moment for the Epstein set of facts in 2019, it's that it continues to hit at the heart of the American hierarchy. And the nature of Epstein himself, the nature of what Epstein is about and the claims that are made about Epstein hits to the heart of the power structure of the government. Because if it was a blackmail operation for a foreign government, which people think it may be, or even if it was just, a blackmail operation that targeted high-ranking officials in the government, that hits to the heart of the power structure in America. It calls into question who controls America, what's controlling America, who has power in America, who controls the levers of power. And so you see how the nature of that topic alone is about the sun, the king, the emperor, and then the eclipse of that sun, showing the real true nature, the true fate of what the power structure is, in a way that there's a downfall, particularly with Epstein, literally with Epstein in 2019, according to the official story, and definitely a downfall of Epstein as he was known or as we knew him going into that moment. And if he's dead, of course, definitely a downfall. So it's the downfall of the power structure. And let's keep going here, because those are the Great American Eclipse. Those are the events that are the main events from that peak zone and that peak period. And I think it's a good proof of the technique working in our time. Let's continue. Let's continue, because I want to come to the October 2023 eclipse, which was on 14 October 2023. And when you run this algorithm, you get this as the peak zone, 3 May 2025 to 20 November 2025. So we are living, and we have been living since May this year, in the peak of these eclipse effects. And just on my mind, what has happened, Epstein is a big part of it again. It's again Epstein, because look what happened. July 2025, the DOJ memo says there is no Epstein client list. That caused a huge uproar, because so much of the supporting base of Trump was saying, we want the list. Even the people that Trump put in his cabinet were like saying, we're going to release the list. They ran on that as a main issue, and then they shut it down. And so it caused a huge backlash and a split in the base around this issue. And some people are like, we don't like Trump anymore, or we're off that train, because of the duplicity that they see around this. So that's July, during this eclipse peak. You had in mid-July also, the Wall Street Journal reports Trump appeared in Epstein's 50th birthday book, which Trump denied and sued. You had in July House Speaker Mike Johnson insisting the Epstein case is not a hoax, when Trump was saying it was a hoax. So it was this major scandal this summer. Is it a hoax? Is it not a hoax? In August 2025, DOJ agrees to hand over the Epstein files to Congress under a subpoena with redactions. In September 2025, the Epstein estate turns over new documents to House oversight, calendars, logs, ledgers, etc. So there you go. It's still unfolding. I mean, this may be the story this fall. This may explode somehow, October, November, December this fall, if there's new information or new details or new lists or whatever it's going to be. But right as this October 2023 visible eclipse across America, it was from the northwest down through Utah and into Texas, this is all blowing up again. And so there's that issue. Two is the issue of the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I alluded to that 2 videos ago, which is that this would be a downfall of a person, right? Charlie Kirk being embedded with the president and Trump's team. And so there's kind of a downfall moment here of a person that would fit with the symbolism again. Some people talk about that assassination of Charlie Kirk being a trigger event that we may see ripple and have other effects or impacts in terms of destabilizing the domestic American landscape. I haven't really seen that as much yet. It's kind of calmed on that. Thankfully, it's not some trigger and there's not wars and armies going after each other or something like this, but it did fit with this moment and this timeline. And this is one thing I want to say. I feel like one way to read all of this, like with these eclipse effects, there are things that mesmerize everyone. They're things that are like egregores in the collective mental construct, or the whatever you want to call this, the collective mind. That Epstein didn't kill himself meme became this totalizing egregore in summer 2019. The Trump Mueller report was omnipresent in the discourse in 2019. And that's how I think about it more energetically, setting aside the literal narratives of what will or will not happen or the impact of this or that. It's undeniable that the Charlie Kirk assassination took over the mental models of reality. I mean, it became the central organizing node of most of the human collective, or many people in the human collective. And so that's what I think these are about, maybe more than anything, where you have the kind of ruptures in the collective consciousness that bring many minds focusing on one thing. And that's the eclipse effect, or that's the eclipse implication. So it's just another way to look at it. And I bring that up here because I think the Charlie Kirk assassination, even if it doesn't have a reverberation that's some kind of chain of event reaction, it already has proved to be like the major story, one of the top stories in 2025 in terms of its impact on this collective psyche. The only other thing to say about this October 2023 eclipse is that we're still in the peak of it. Let's just remind us, the Ptolemaic algorithm gives a range, and there's reasons for why it produces a range that I'm not going to go into, but there's a start date of the peak and an end date of the peak, and the peak event should happen in between those two dates. And so for the October 2023 eclipse, we still have time in the range of the peak, and that peak ends on the 20th of November. According to my granular calculations, I calculated down to the day to try to get very precise with the exact day when these effects may end, and it's 20 November. So here I record this on 3 October. I'll probably release it on 6 October, hopefully. And we have then another month and 3 weeks, roughly, to pay attention to what's going to happen in America. Eclipse effects. Let's shift. This is the final eclipse I'm examining in this video. It's the April 8th, 2024 visible eclipse. It ran through the Northeast and then down through Texas. I don't think the path necessarily defines where the events will happen. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo was not in the eclipse path Sarajevo in the 1912 eclipse. It was a little bit off of it, but it still ran through Europe, and many of the nations in that eclipse path were directly impacted by that assassination. The Charlie Kirk assassination in Utah wasn't in the exact eclipse path, but it was darn close. The 9/11 eclipse from 1999, that did not go through New York, but it got really close off the East Coast. So just keep that in mind. I mean, this is Northeast down through Texas, and it may not be that it's exactly on the path, but it could be somehow near it, or maybe more about the Northeastern United States, or the Eastern or Southeastern United States. But okay, here, when you plug in the Ptolemaic formula, these are the dates. 6 October 2025 to 4 April 2026. So that's why I'm making this video now, is that this second eclipse has a peak that starts on 6 October and ends in April. But if you've been paying attention, this is the most interesting thing about all this, is that we have 2 visible eclipses in America. Each one has a range of a peak, but then they have a shared range as well. So we get a doubling up here, 6 October 2025 until 20 November 2025, of 2 visible eclipses, like a pincer, right focused on America, and these ideas of eclipse upheaval being timed right in this zone. So that's the most important takeaway from this video, and that's why I made it, is pay attention. Those of you that are out there interested in mundane astrology, this is a hot period, the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And let's just see what happens. I try to hold reality loosely. I try to hold the seriousness of life loosely and try to have a levity and a kind of divine elegance to it, the beauty of the divine unfoldment of life. I try to keep that in mind and hold that in mind as we watch terrible things in the news, as we watch shocking things, as we see hysteria, collective hysteria around events. Sometimes it's nice to hold it all within a larger divine context and sort of a faith and a trust, in something greater. And astrology can be that. Astrology is an elegance. It's a system of elegance. It's about measuring movements of the stars, things that are beautiful to gaze upon. The moon and Venus, so elegant, so profoundly beautiful. And so when you see reality moving in a pattern matching the elegant movements of the heavens, that is a kind of levity, and that can kind of be something to rest in here. The sort of divine mystery, the cosmic jest, the cosmic joke, as they say. So some of that I like to bring in here with this, and I'm making this video mostly with that energy. You know, it's not to scare anybody. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not predicting anything's going to happen. I don't want anything big to happen. I don't want any upheaval or anything. I want peace, love, settlement, and everybody's life to be wonderful. Okay, that's my wish and my vision and my prediction if I'm going to make one. And I'm happy to be wrong about that. I'm laying this technique out, one, because it's a proof of some very interesting astrology that's been very accurate. Two, it's something where we can watch it like a movie. Got the popcorn on, let's see what happens. Let's see how accurate it may be this time. And three, if there is something, if there is a tear in the matrix and an egregore emerges, that there's a collective mass hysteria around or a mass formation, it's good to be a little bit prepared for that. It's good to know, hey, we're entering in a hot eclipse effects window, and this might help you engage that wisely. If something like that does emerge, it might help you just say, all right, there's some other cosmic formula here that's participating in this. We don't have to choose to go mad with it. One of my favorite sayings, just because things go mad around us doesn't mean we have to go mad with them. That's why I love mundane astrology, is because it can help us contextualize and narrativize in ways that takes the pressure out of just our little worlds and puts it into this larger container of the cosmic mystery. That's the video. I don't have much more to say about it. I just wish everybody a wonderful rest of October. You can go watch my October month ahead video that I released before this one, and I break down some of the key energies. We still haven't even hit Venus in Libra yet. This video is going to be out well before that. So that's a beautiful thing about October, is the strong Venus and the strong Mars. So keep that in mind, and I hope you all get to enjoy the fruits of that in some way, shape, or form in your charts and in your lives. More videos here from me soon. You can follow me on Patreon and join us over there. I've got more videos that I release all the time, live streams, a weekly summary that I do there. I've got just regular update videos that I make there. So if you're interested in that, you can go over there. Please like and subscribe here. It allows me to keep sharing astrology with you, which I'm greatly happy about, and so thank you for that. If you're not subscribed, maybe check and see if you are. Throw that sub down if you want. We'll talk real soon, okay, everybody? Peace, take care, bye-bye.